Mayor's Update for November 2016. I'm Meghan Pembroke, Communications Director for the City of Everett. Each month we sit down with Mayor Ray Stephanson to talk about issues and projects that are important to you. Mayor, welcome.
Thank you.
Got a lot to talk about this month.
There's a lot going on. I sort of remember when I started in this job, we had an off season. I don't even remember when it was, but we don't have it anymore.
Yeah, I haven't experienced that since I started. Well, let's kick it off by talking about Safe Streets updates, as we often do. And I do want to talk about supportive housing in a bit. But let's start by talking about an event that we held at the end of October. This was a chance for the Community Streets Initiative Task Force to come back together one last time and really look at the last 2 years, reflect on the report and what's been accomplished. Can you talk a little bit about that process and what's happened since then?
Yeah, in fact, I'll even go back a little further, probably 10 years ago. And I think we worked on a lot of issues, improving the economy, getting a four-year college in our community, looking at major employers and making sure that we had that strong financial base for the city, and particularly during the recession from really 2008 for a good 8 years, it was a struggle, as we all know. But what we really started seeing, really in a very significant way about 3 years ago, maybe even a little longer, was this growing population on our streets. And it really became a concern, as you remember. We took a good part of a year, 3 years ago, to really sort of ask ourselves who were the citizens in our community that could help us, one, identify root causes, identify the issues, and then make some recommendations, because frankly we all felt pretty powerless. I mean, a lot of wonderful things going on in the community, but really seeing people in need really struggling. So it's been now over 2 years ago that the Safe Streets Initiative Task Force, some 23 citizens, came together and looked at issues. I think it may be not surprising, but it really needs to be said that sort of the overriding issue for those on the street was poverty. So people got there because they lost their job, they got there through addiction, they got there through untreated mental illness. They got there, 20% of this population between the age of 18 and 24, and, pretty tough and challenging home life for some of these young people. But what came out of that was a number of recommendations, over 60, but some really significant recommendations around helping this population and improving the quality of life in our community. And so what we did, and I think we've done it very well, is looked at the success of other communities around looking for positive outcomes for this homeless population. And we really got pretty quickly focused on what Salt Lake City was doing around Housing First, what we have since found cities like Spokane and Tacoma and Seattle, who struggles in a huge way with this issue. And we've had an opportunity in late October to sit down and really bring our community up to date with what we were doing. I think the most significant thing I can say about asking this group of citizens to come together, because there's always skepticism anytime you do a task force or you do recommendations, is it just going to draw dust on the shelf? This has been a very living document. A lot of action and outcomes are occurring because of it. And we know in our daily work life, we're dealing with homeless issues and neighborhood issues every single day of the week. It's really become sort of our way of life and our mission, and I know we all feel very strongly about making our community better for everyone. So October was a good opportunity to sit down with those citizens that joined us a couple of years ago when we kicked this off, and we brought Lloyd Pendleton from Salt Lake City, and we challenged ourselves to house people in scattered sites, and we've done a lot of that. We've gotten people in treatment. We haven't been as successful in scattered housing, and we quickly realized that we needed a housing project. And so we're moving ahead with a 70-unit supportive housing in the Pinehurst neighborhood, and really working through all the issues associated with that. But I'm absolutely convinced we're on the right track.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit more. So creating more supportive housing in Everett in the county was one of the priority recommendations of the Streets Initiative Task Force.
Right.
And as you said, we're moving forward with the site and with Catholic Housing Services as our developer. Housing First is a concept that's been used across the country. It's a proven model, but it's newer for Everett, and people have questions about how it will work and how it will affect them. Can you talk through kind of what Housing First is and why we think this particular approach is so critical to our long-term success?
Well, I would say that we are not unique. Every community that we've talked to, before they've done their first supporting or low-bearing housing or Housing First, it comes by a number of different names. There has been this fear of the unknown, and is it really going to, if it's located close to my neighborhood, is it really going to have a negative effect on my quality of life? And so it's important to describe and just keep the dialogue going with our citizens about really what it is. So the top 10 utilizers of service that we've identified in our community are using emergency services and having contact with police and our paramedics and our emergency rooms on a way too frequent basis. I mean, I think the top individual out of, you figure a year of 365 days or 366 if it's a leap year, 245, 250 encounters in a year. That gets really expensive really fast. I mean, $500,000 of services a year or more, maybe as much as $1 million. And supportive housing, which is seed money provided for the support services and the 7-day-a-week, 24-hour staff. But Catholic Housing Services has an incredible track record of going out and raising capital to build these facilities in the private sector. Because frankly, they're full, they pay their rent every month, and it's a good investment for a lot of small group investors. So that's the path that we're on. And just to describe supportive housing for a minute, because we just have to keep repeating this. We will go out and identify individuals in our community. Most all of these individuals will be Everett residents, but we have people on our streets, frankly, that may have come from Monroe or may have come from Snohomish or Murraysville. And because they're homeless here. So we need to help them. And we will get them, based on that screening process, into this housing. They don't have to get clean and sober first. They don't have to get on medication if they have a mental illness problem. They will get those services inside this very controlled environment. And this is really like an opportunity for people to live and be safe. And we're finding, and other cities have found, try to get someone treatment who's on the street, whether it's mental illness or drug or alcohol treatment, the success rate is almost zero. And we can have a very positive impact on good outcomes. And people, I've talked to folks at Bridgeway, these folks, once they get help and treatment in this controlled environment, they can get back into the workforce. That's what they want. That will improve their quality of life. And that's what we want really as a community. So this fear of this 70 units being located in your neighborhood, I think people have visions, oh my goodness, there's going to be people lined up outside the door trying to get treatment. That's not what this is about. Or there'll be people roaming in and out and parties and disrupting our quality of life. The comings and goings of these residents is monitored. There's a lot of communication with the neighborhood. And the point is here, whether you believe it's the right thing to do in helping people and getting them to live a productive life, one, it's cost effective, about $14,000 per individual per year. And again, even if you don't believe that that's the right thing to do, there's 70 individuals that are not on the streets. They're not in your backyard. They're not in the woods down the street. They're not down on Smith Street. They are in a controlled environment, protected, and getting the help that they need. And we can do that in a very cost-effective way. So I think the challenge for us over the next decade, and I would say this challenge is really countywide, is we're going to need to, I think the need is probably as much as Salt Lake City experienced, which is there's probably 1,000 units of housing we're going to need to build. And Salt Lake City, a very conservative Mormon city, very conservative politics, was able to do that in 10 years. And I think that that's really the vision for Everett and the greater Snohomish County area.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
And before we take a break, I wanted to talk really quickly about the Streets Initiative Coordinator position. Julie Fraunholz has been filling that position as an independent contractor embedded with the city for the last year, and she's been really instrumental in helping us get momentum with the Safe Streets plan. Now she's going to be moving out into the community to help them get some of those other Streets Initiative recommendations going. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. You know, even today, we're learning every day. We're meeting with HUD, we're figuring out how to get financing and support, and we're meeting with the people that live and work in the housing community who have done it for years. And I want to tell them too, we're not there to do their job, we're there to help and support them. But Julie came to the city really as an employee who was paid for by United Way. United Way clearly saw and supported what we were doing around supportive housing. And she really was one of the founders of how we deal with helping individuals into supportive and low barrier housing. She was the communication to the business community. She was the communication externally and internally. And I'll tell you, without her help and support, we just wouldn't be where we are today. We quickly saw, and quickly in government's relative, but, within 6 months or so, we knew that we needed a permanent position, and Hill came and has stepped in that role. He was our lead prosecutor, has a lot of passion around this. And so we've created sort of a small group to work this day in and day out, and Julie has helped us establish that. But now, and this is really going to be critical going forward, now she can do that externally. She can be out there, she knows what we're doing, she can communicate that to business groups and churches and the faith-based community and others, and really make a difference in terms of here's what works and here's what doesn't work. And I'll tell you, her passion and commitment around this is just second to none. So I very much appreciate United Way's funding this. I appreciate her willingness to come and help us find our way. And now she can really be a huge advocate for this issue in the greater community. So I want to thank her for that.
Thank you, Mayor. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll get a preview of the 2017 budget and talk about boards and commissions.
Hi, I'm Jerry. Normally, I'd be in the back hefting 50-pound bags of flour, but I injured my ankle. Doctor says I gotta stay off my foot, so my boss gave me a light-duty job while I recover.
It's Labor and Industry Stay-at-Work program. He and his doctor filed online while I applied to get half his base wages reimbursed while he recovers.
I get to stay on the job.
And I get to keep a valued employee. It's a win-win.
And it turns out I got a knack for decorating cake.
Who knew?
Learn more about light-duty options at stayatwork.lni.wa.gov.
Welcome back to the Mayor's Update. Well, Mayor, it's that time of year every year when we take stock of our budget and take a look at what's ahead. At the end of October, you gave your annual budget address, and it was pretty neat to hear about all of the things that are going on in Everett and are coming next year. Can you give us a quick update kind of on the economic development and higher education fronts about what's going on?
Sure. You know, every municipality struggles from a revenue perspective in this state, and probably the country as well. And you know, it's interesting, the closer you get to the people, we're clearly at the bottom of the food chain. So if the federal government has trouble balancing its budget, you know, it says, gee, we think this is a state responsibility. And then the state says, well, gee, we think this is a local responsibility. So, but it is what it is. So for us, success in the services we provide, the quality of life that we want, is really tied very closely to how we're growing and how robust we are as a community, and our companies wanting to be here. Is the business climate right? Do we have arts and culture and free activities for people? It's always been a huge rub to me, being a state park person all my life, that I now have to pay to drive through a state park. So we don't, you know, this is part of what's basic about our quality of life, or should be, and that's what we value here. So for us, it's been a long road to recovery from 2008. So it took us until 2016, it took us till this year to get back to the revenue that we enjoyed in 2007. That's a long time. And we had to do some extraordinary things to make sure we didn't lay people off. You know, we didn't do maintenance, we didn't do cost of living for our exempt and elected officials for a number of years. You know, we did what we had to do, and we were probably not unlike, you know, every household in the community in terms of, you know, tightening your belt. But we really now are starting to see the benefit of a lot of hard work. Our Riverfront development, 10 homes sold, they're not even all built. At the Eclipse site to the far north of that Riverfront development will be townhouses and multifamily. And then in 2018 and 19, we'll begin to see the mixed-use development come out of the ground. The Port of Everett, I mean, the dream was always to have Everett bookended, I'm not sure the right term, from the saltwater to the riverfront, because we really are a peninsula city. And the port has done a remarkable job cleaning up the environment for a lot of years. People really never saw the benefit of that, but we are really seeing it now as new the fisherman's area. And you know, in the 60s, I was down on those docks as a commercial fisherman and in those net sheds. And now it's going to be this incredible development coming out of the ground of restaurants and shops and visitors pier for boaters to come and enjoy the restaurants, and condominium and residential living and hotels. I think the port is anticipated that they'll have nearly $400 million in private sector investment through the life of Waterfront Place. So these two waterfront developments that we talked about when I first became mayor, 12 years ago, and then we waited and we waited and we waited for an improved economy, they're coming to fruition. WSU's building, 100,000 square feet, will open next June. We've seen additional degree offerings both in tech and hotel management, hospitality, food growth. I mean, it's just been remarkable. And then the late Dr. Floyd, one of his last significant efforts with the legislature before he passed away last year was to get a medical school approved. And now it's passed its first accreditation process. We're going to have medical students in this community in 2019. In all the hope that I had for a four-year college, I never envisioned we would have medical students. But they'll be interning at Providence and Everett Clinic, and I hope with our paramedics, and going out after they become certified as doctors to serve in smaller communities across Western and Eastern Washington. That's a pretty cool thing. And then the infrastructure projects. We've got the Grand Avenue Bridge that will tie the neighborhood, northwest neighborhood, to the waterfront. We're improving intersections to move freight. In the coming 2 or 3 years, we're going to see a new hard-running shoulder lane between Everett and Marysville to give relief, a new intersection near Marysville. We're going to see improvements to 526 for, those 55,000 workers. And then I really hope that we'll be working hard to realize light rail by 2035, 2036. There's just a whole lot of stuff going on. Children's Hospital has made a commitment to come to Everett. We'll be very close to Providence and be able to take advantage of that facility as well. And Children's Hospital, they saved our son Ryan's life 41 years ago, so we have a real close and strong tie with children. So to have them here and to have our families have that access to the highest quality health care for their kids, it just doesn't get any better than that. So, and I know there's a zillion other things I could.
What about our downtown core? There's the
yeah.
Funko, and
we got Funko. We've done 1,000 units of housing downtown. We're going to do another 1,000 in the coming years. I mean, we really are becoming a pedestrian, walkable city. Patella Market, over 200 units. I mean, it's all full. The market's starting to come together. That was a dream of ours. The Arrow Apartments. I mean, we can't build residential units fast enough. And then we'll see improvements to Rucker that are very much like Hoyt Avenue. It's just going to be, really cool. I'll tell you, if I thought back even 65 years ago that this would ever be part of the community when the city limits was at 41st and the city was 25,000 people, I mean, you could have knocked me over with a feather. I would have said, never going to happen. But I think that we've grown very gracefully. I think we haven't lost our small town appeal. We're still a very caring community, from Dawson Place to supporting domestic violence organizations to help the most vulnerable of our communities. And it doesn't, whatever the issue is, our seniors, I mean, we really step up personally and professionally and really always with an eye on improving our quality of life. So it's a pretty cool place.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
And I wanted to close by talking about boards and commissions. We have a number of volunteer boards and commissions, and this month we are opening applications for people who want to get involved, whether it's animals or parks or transportation. We really have something no matter what your interest is. And
right.
I know you are really hoping to see even more of our citizens get involved. And so can you talk a little bit about what it means to serve on a board and
Sure.
what the future of that is?
I can, and I also mentioned to you, as you know, you just reminded me that we'll start an update to our Vision 2025 after the first of the year. We had over 50 individuals from 13 of our 19 neighborhoods apply to be on that committee, and that was very heartwarming. And a lot of hard work by you and Bob Bullerjack and others to make sure that we had a very representative group. So our boards and commissions, just a whole host of ways to serve your city. And we have a lot of, I think, over 300 individuals that serve on boards and commissions. So there's plenty of opportunity. We've really made a point of really trying to encourage new involvement by citizens who maybe haven't been involved before. It's a time commitment. You know, most boards or commissions, you're going to meeting after work once a month. If you're on the vision committee, it's going to be probably a little more intense, but for a defined period of time. But I would really encourage our citizens who have wonderful skills, from caring for animals to planning experience to love of parks. It's just a variety of ways to serve, to volunteer and be part of Everett and Everett's future.
It's a great way to learn more about your local government and make your voice heard. And we have a lot of information on our website at everettwa.gov/boards for people who are interested.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And thank you for joining us. We hope to see you again next month.